Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Gilda Evans, bringing you the Autism Resource Podcast. This podcast and the ARP website are your one-stop knowledge and resource space for autism and much more. I'm very happy to have Michelle Wolf join me as my guest today. Michelle is a parent disability advocate and nonprofit social services innovator. She is the founding executive director of the Jewish Los Angeles Special Needs Trust, the first pooled nonprofit trust based in LA County for persons with a range of disabilities. Her professional career has been devoted to ensuring that people with chronic health conditions and disabilities are able to access government benefits and enjoy a higher quality of life. Welcome, Michelle, and thanks so much for taking time to join me today and talk about the work that you do.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here and get some good information out to your listeners.
To begin with, let's talk about why it's so hard for people with disabilities to get and keep government benefits.
So that's a great question. There's very complicated rules in the different benefits programs, whether that's SSI, Medicaid, we call it Medi-Cal here in California, even food stamps, known nationally as SNAP and in California as CalFresh. They each have their own separate set of rules and regulations. It can be complicated to meet all the criteria. And then, of course, there's paperwork that has to be filled out. And then once you're accepted into the program, there's the issue of redeterminations. So depending on the program, every year or two, you will be asked to supply all kinds of documentation on your state of disability, on how the money that you received has been spent. And that can be complicated for people, especially if you move around a lot and maybe you don't get the letters in the mail. And the other issue is that these programs use outdated technology. So you can't even email anybody. You have to fax your information or take it in person. So the red tape, the paperwork, the complex different rules, they all create barriers for people getting and keeping their essential government benefits.
Yeah, those are some really good points. You could explain for everyone, what is a pooled special needs trust and why would someone with a disability need one? And by the way, even though it's called the Jewish LA Trust, you service everyone, right?
Of course, we're open to all backgrounds, all religions, all gender identification. We're really here for everybody.
Okay, in detail, what is a pooled special needs trust? Why does someone with a disability need one?
So a pooled special needs trust is a subcategory in the general category of special needs trusts. So special needs trusts, the idea is it's a safe harbor. It's a way, it's like a tax shelter. It's a way of keeping all your government benefits, SSI, Medicaid, food stamps, and at the same time having access to private funds, such as from an inheritance or a legal settlement. Now, what the pool trust is really designed for is for people who don't have high assets. So if you have $2 or $3 million to put into a special needs trust, you have a lot of good options, a lot of commercial banks, commercial trusts, professional licensed fiduciaries. If you have less than $1 million, no professional or corporate trustee really wants to talk to you. So the pool trusts were created by Congress 32 years ago. And what Congress said is that these pool trusts have to be operated by a nonprofit. They have to create a master trust, which acts as a governing document and is typically created by an expert in the field. And then people enroll under that master trust, which is like a big umbrella, and they enroll with a simple legal agreement called a joinder agreement. So a pool trust could have 20 people under the governing document, could have 100, could have 3,000, could have 20,000. So we started about 10 years ago. We enrolled our first client in 2016. So right now we have about 220 enrolled clients under our pooled master trust. So what's great about a pooled trust is it saves a lot of money on the setup. If you went to a private trust attorney and asked them to set up a special needs trust for your family, and you appoint, let's say, a sister or a brother to be the trustee, that's going to set you back at least $3,000 to $5,000. Our setup fees are much less. For setting up a trust that's going to be in the future, that's a total cost of $800. And for setting up an active trust for people that have $20,000 or more, that's a flat $1,300 enrollment fee, which covers the first 12 months of trustee services. So you could see how the pool trust saves money on the enrollment piece. And then going forward, we have a flat trustee fee that's asset based. That's going to be far less than if you went to a private fiduciary who's going to charge you $175, $200 an hour. I like to say we leverage the power of community to reduce the setup and ongoing costs. And then on the investment side of things, it's really cool. Let's say Betty's 50,000 gets added to Joe's 200,000 and so forth. So right now we have a little over 13 million. We're able to get potentially higher rates of investment income by pooling on the investment side. So it's similar to a mutual fund. Everybody has their own sub account and everybody gets so many units, similar to shares of a stock, so many units of an investment portfolio that's being held at Charles Schwab. And we have a wonderful manager of our funds, TrueLink Financial, which is based in San Francisco, which is a for-profit company, but they work in the space of helping vulnerable adults, both older folks with dementia and younger adults with a range of disabilities. So we get really high-level expert investment management of our clients' assets. And again, all at below market affordable prices.
Okay. And if somebody, let's say they choose to participate in the pool trust, obviously this is something that you would hope they would stay in for the long term. But let's say something happens and suddenly they do inherit 2 or 3 or 4 million dollars and they want to move that to another place, take care of it in a different way. Is that something that's possible? Is it a permanent commitment or they can move at any time?
All special needs trusts have to be irrevocable by law, because if they were revocable, if they could be broken, then the beneficiary would have access to the assets. And unfortunately, a lot of these government programs only let you have $2,000 at a time, $3,000, very low amounts. We can't just break the trust, but we can resign as trustee and we can name a successor trustee. And there's a great word for it. It's called decanting, like a wine. So we can decant the trust. And so that's certainly a possibility. Yes.
I see. Okay. Then when should parents start thinking about long-term plans for their child with autism or other developmental disabilities?
It really depends on the nature of the child's disability, how much they're impacted by their disability. The big question is, do you think this individual is ever going to be able to make a living on their own without parent help? So that's question number one. And then even if they're able to make a living, then there's the question of how well are they going to be able to handle their own finances, pay their own bills. And then on top of that, there's unfortunately the whole scamming and financial predator issue, because some of our folks who are the least impacted by their disabilities and they're out in the community and they're working and they're going to school and they're doing all the things we as parents hope for, some of them can become very vulnerable to, unfortunately, those financial predators. And when they hear wind that somebody has money, especially in a trust, they may try to take advantage of that person. So having money in the trust really acts as a safeguard and as a security perimeter around that individual's money. Like I said, we're going to look at the level of disability, their ability to handle money. And then the issue is, what is the situation with the parents? How old are the parents? Is it a double parent household? Is it a single parent household? So in general, the time to start thinking about it for most people is going to be, when they're in high school, and when they're getting ready to graduate from high school, whether it's a certificate or a full diploma. And it's hard. Parents, everybody wants the best, of course. Setting up the special needs trust when your child is in the early 20s, that's probably going to give you enough runway to have a pretty good idea of what the child is capable of. And then being able to plan ahead for the parents' health. And then the other issue is sometimes there's grandparents who want to leave money directly to the grandchildren, or aunts and uncles who don't have children themselves. That is the case. You're probably better off setting up the special needs trust earlier than later. So that trust is that empty vessel ready to receive assets at a later time when there's an inheritance.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned parents getting older, and
Right.
obviously, those of us who have children, as we do get older in age, we start thinking about what's going to happen when I'm not here anymore. And in that light, what kinds of roles and responsibilities should siblings, if there are siblings, be asked to take on as the parents get older or pass away? And also, if you could add to that, what roles and responsibilities the trust is capable of taking on itself.
We'll start with the siblings first. It's very complicated with the siblings. There's love and affection between the siblings, but at the same time, there's often a lot of resentment. My brother and my sister got more attention when I was little. There was more money spent on them for all their therapies and special equipment. And those resentments can be very deep seated. I've had parents come to me and say, I'm sure my daughter, who's typical, is going to take care of the brother. And then they call me back 6 months later and said, you know what? We had a real heart to heart talk. And the sister said, I've been dealing with his stuff my whole life. And I got my own family and my own health issues. And I just don't want to do it. So that could be really hard for parents to hear that, because naturally parents want to keep things close in. And especially when it comes to disability, there's stigma issues. There's the issue, it's nobody else's business. In some cases, there's cultural issues. But by and large, the best practice in the field is to use a corporate professional trustee. And the reason why that's the best practice is you're getting somebody who understands the government benefits, which can change from time to time. And we're seeing changes right now in this time of uncertainty. You need to understand the resources that are available in the community. You might need to understand tax implications and also the investment side of things. And then there's the interpersonal dynamic. Is the sibling with a disability going to text every day saying, there's a brand new video game out. I want you to buy me that video game with my trust funds. Buy it now. Why aren't you getting it for me right now? So you could see how that could create a lot of tension. So we have a really great role for siblings or other close family members, but it's not a legal role. It's a liaison function. We call it beneficiary advocate. And so the beneficiary advocate can be part of spending plan meetings. They can get copies of quarterly statements. They can call up staff member that's assigned to the beneficiary. But at the same time, they're not having any legal obligations. We think that's really the best of both worlds. That professional trustee backed up by that professional investment team, and then the family member really looking out for their brother and sister in the way that they know best. And then when it comes to the trustee role, a lot of that, it's really up to the parents. And the thing is about us parents who have our special needs adults, I have a 30-year-old son with pretty severe disabilities. We're so used to taking care of things and paying for things out of pocket. It's hard to turn that over to somebody else. But I do recommend, especially if one parent dies and one is left, and certainly when they get past about 70, 75, it's really good if you can kind of cut back on your direct daily, weekly involvement with your adult child and turn it over to a team of professionals. And that way you're there to help during that transition period. Because I've seen some sad things happen when the parents die somewhat suddenly, and that adult child is just lost. The parents were buying their groceries, they were paying for their health insurance premiums, they were making sure their prescriptions were refilled. And sometimes, yeah, you can get ILS, independent living services, from the regional center. And some of the agencies do a better job than others, but they still aren't going to have that familiarity, of course, that a family member would have. So I think as parents, it's incumbent upon us to withdraw a bit as we can and not just hold our breaths and hope everything's going to turn out okay.
Yeah, well, I can certainly concur with that. The role that you're explaining, the roles that you were talking about, is that the type of role that the trust could take on if the family wanted it to? And also, you mentioned the regional center that's here in California, where we are and where you're located in Los Angeles. But I'm wondering, what if someone is from out of the area or even out of the state? Is this a service that can be provided to them as well?
It depends on the state. Many states do have Medicaid waivers that provide similar independent living services or some kind of in-home support. But I know some states have huge wait lists for that kind of service. As trustee, we're really concerned about the money that's in the trust. So we do things like we can cut rent check every month and make sure the rent check gets out in time. People can send like their internet or cell phone bills to us, and we can make sure those recurring expenses are paid. If people need to buy a mattress or take a trip or buy a car, we can walk them through all of those things. Now, when it comes to anything dealing with healthcare, that is beyond what we do. So there's a couple of options. Either there's a family member that has the power of healthcare, or a conservator, or a guardian. And the other thing is, for some of our clients that really need assistance and there's no other agency or person to provide that, we can use trust funds to pay for ongoing private case management services. So we have a whole group of case managers we work with, and there are national care advisors who are available. And typically they'll go in and they do an assessment of the person's current level of functioning, and they'll identify all the areas where support is needed: prescription refill, transportation to and from the doctor, making sure certain bills are paid. And then that care manager takes on the role of a parent, making sure all the different functions and activities and tasks get taken care of. So the only problem with that is it's not cheap. Those people cost a minimum of $150 an hour. And so they're not usually doing the direct care, although sometimes they will come like on a Sunday night and set up people's pills for the week. But generally, they're not going to be direct care. They're going to be supervising any direct care professionals. If the person's in a group home, they'll be in touch with the group home director. The person's living with supported living with independent living service vendor, that case manager would be in touch with that independent living service agency.
So you do service people both in and out of California. Is that correct?
No, right now we only service people in California. Most of our clients, I'd say 75% are in LA County, Orange County, or Ventura County. We do have a number in the Bay Area as well. And we have 2 in San Diego. California is a pretty big state with 40 million people. So we feel like we've got our work cut out for us here. But if people need referrals, there are similar pool trusts run by nonprofits all around the country. And we attend national conferences and so forth. And so I can give referrals to other similar agencies.
Okay, that's really good to know. So tell me, what do you think is the biggest mistake parents make when planning ahead for their child with disabilities?
Number one, of course, is not doing anything. It, it's so easy for us as humans to be in denial that things are ever going to change. And we've all, as parents and families, I know, have all struggled so hard to get our family member with a disability into the right program and into the right services, and trying to take advantage of every service and program that's out there. And it's really hard to think of anybody else doing the work that we do. And what I always tell parents is no one's going to be able to replace you, but there might be a whole team that, through their various roles and responsibilities, the sum of the parts will pretty much be able to take on what you've always done. The first thing is the recognition that you need to plan ahead, talking to a financial planner, making sure there's life insurance, because life insurance is a great way for middle class families to have additional wealth after they pass. A lot of our families have worked for large entities like LA County or the school districts. We have a lot of parents who come from those kind of work backgrounds. And so to talk to their benefits departments and really get an understanding, what does the pension look like if I die and there's a disabled adult child? We had a client from the LA City firefighters, and the police and the firefighters traditionally have pretty good pension programs. And it turns out that the pensions even extended to the adult child with a disability. But they had to have a special needs trust set up before that pension could kick into place. And the father, who was a firefighter, never did anything about it when he was alive. So after he was gone, then other family members had to step in and work with the employee benefit department to get that benefit up and going. So definitely taking our heads out of the sand, and I'm going to include myself in that. The second biggest issue is expecting government to take care of everything. There's a sense, especially in California, we got the regional center system and they take care of people birth to death. The regional center will figure it out. And it's true that most regional center clients do not end up, thank God, homeless in the streets, but the level of care and their limited options and preferences might not be at all what the families would have wanted for that adult child. So that's where it's important to apply for and keep as many government benefits as you can, but not to expect government to take care of everything. And then the third thing really boils down to dollars and cents. Families not putting aside enough money for a lifetime. Because if parents pass away, let's say in their 80s, and the adult child is in their 50s, that person could live another 30 or 40 years. So having enough money, and most people end up spending the most on their health care and in-home help for the last 3 to 5 years of their life. Really making sure there's money for the adult child's end of their life. And that's hard. That's a lot of decades to plan ahead for. So that's why we encourage people to see a certified financial planner. We encourage people to meet with a trust and estate attorney. And like I said, we encourage people to really figure out what other benefits they might have from their employer down the line.
That's all excellent advice, Michelle. At this point, I would like to ask you, is there anything I haven't asked that you would like to mention? And what is the most important takeaway you'd like our listeners to have from this conversation?
The most important takeaway is that person-centered planning for the future needs to start taking place in the late teens, early 20s. So you're setting up a plan for success. I like to say hope is not a plan. So for some parents, that could mean downsizing. They've been living in a pretty nice sized house their whole life and they're getting to be empty nesters. So they'll sell the house and maybe they use some of that money to buy a condo for their adult child with disabilities. Maybe what I'm doing, we sadly ended up with an inheritance from a grandparent. And so I'm using that money to build a backyard house known as an ADU for my son right on our property. For some people, that could be starting to look into group home options. Some people could be looking into, we have good friends where two of the sons are now living together in an apartment about 2 miles away from the parents. And they have a roommate who's a neurotypical person who's getting a reduced rent. So that person's there kind of evenings and making sure the person with the disabilities getting up, getting out, getting to their day program or getting to their school program or whatever it is. I see all kinds of creative solutions popping up because unfortunately, for a long time, the government model was either you just stay with your aging parents until they die, or you go into a group home. And a lot of the group homes don't work for our adults because the ratio is typically low, 1 to 6, or at the most 2 to 6. So that means if, someone wants to go to the park, everyone has to go to the park. And if somebody really wants to go see a movie and no one else wants to see that movie, they might not get to go see the movie. Group homes don't work for a lot of people. I know in some states, if the parents really can't take care, the aging parents can't take care of their adult with disabilities, they could end up in a nursing home. And no one wants to put a 35-year-old in a nursing home, which is mostly with 80 and 90-year-olds, mostly with dementia. That's going to be a pretty depressing place for that 35-year-old to live. I really do encourage parents to start really being creative and making their own solutions using whatever assets they have, whether it's, like I said, a family home. Maybe grandma passes away and instead of selling her home, that becomes a place where 3 adults with disabilities can live with their own support systems or with that typical roommate, like I mentioned, getting the lower rent. And I know most families were worn out by this point after all the fighting we've been doing to get everything our kid needs. And they want just give me a program. I want to just put my kid in a residential program. But like I said, there's just not enough residential programs out there for our adult children. So we're going to have to be creative and create what we want to see.
I want to thank you so much, Michelle, for your time and for sharing some terrific information and your story with us today.
Oh, thank you. It's a real pleasure, Gilda, to be here. And I hope to see you again.
You're welcome back anytime. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to the podcast. You can find it on Apple iTunes, Amazon Music, Spotify, and other popular platforms. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And if you would like more information on this topic or anything else we've covered on the Autism Resource Podcast, visit us online at autismresourceproject.org/podcast. If you have a topic you'd like us to cover in the future, contact us through the website or comment on any of our social media channels. And be sure to check out our growing website often, since we are continually adding useful information and resources. I want to thank our listeners for spending part of their day with us. This is the Autism Resource Podcast, and I'm Gilda Evans, reminding you to take care of yourself and that special person in your life.